everyone, it's Tanya from Royal City Nursery, and for those of you that don't know me, let me introduce myself just a little differently than normal. So most of you know that I'm third generation garden center owner here at Royal City Nursery. My grandfather started the company in 1962, so after their family emigrated from Denmark. My dad took it over in the 80s, and then, well, now flash forward a few moons and here I am. So I actually have a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from the University of Guelph. And when we think about what my real passion for the outdoor living space is, it is actually just that. It's creating outdoor living spaces. I love to create something that's cohesive, it's creative, and it incorporates both the hardscapes and the softscapes. So hardscapes are things like the rocks and the patio stones and mulch and pots. It's all the stuff that doesn't grow that you put in as the foundation for your landscape. And then the softscape is all the stuff that does grow. So that's the plants. Now, whether that's lawns or trees, shrubs, perennials, vines, annuals, whatever it is, right? So again, when we look at my passion, it's about marrying those two things together, and it's also about making sure that our outdoor space speaks to our indoor space. So that's where the trend part comes in. No different than we have trends in the home, so different paint colors appear every few years. We might change our sofa cushions every couple years, but we don't necessarily change the sofa, right? And same kind of thing applies outdoors. So there's always trends coming. There's always new introductions into the landscape world. And when we think about hardscaping, when we think about trends, some of those actually have the staying power for a number of years. Now, the awesome part about our business here, Royal City Nursery, is we do actually have a full design team. So we've got a landscape architect that works with us, and Jessica's amazing. She's got some fantastic help from a lovely woman by the name of Kate, both of whom are trained at the University of Guelph as well. So yay Guelph, yay home. So we're really, really pushing local. And with those two ladies, they can actually come out on site and give you a hand with both your hardscapes and your softscapes. They're really, really well versed in some of the trends. So if we take a peek at hardscape trends in particular, I know one of the big things right now for 2025, and it's been big for a while, is buying local. Local is fantastic. We want to, well, certainly push local, so we're supporting our friends, we're supporting our family, and more importantly, we're supporting our community. It also means that we actually have something that is less of environmental impact. So now we're also starting to think sustainability, and you can tie local into sustainability really easily, because if your product is coming from local, that means you don't have the gas and the freight bills from a million miles away, right? So it's really, really easy. And when we are thinking local, it also means that we're using local suppliers for our hardscapes and both our softscapes. But in terms of hardscapes, that means things like patio stones and interlock. It also means things like gravel and pea gravel and mulch, right? So we want all of that coming from local suppliers, because we don't want to pay a whole ton of money in freight. We'd rather invest the money in the product. When we think about those particular products and we look at the sustainability side, one of the other big trends we're seeing is the trend, and not just a trend, but the lifestyle change to something that is more sustainable. It's more earth friendly, so we're using slightly different products. Like mulch, for instance. If we use a natural mulch, that's something that actually breaks down and adds nutrients to the soil, right? So it means that our hardscapes can actually give back. If we're using things like patio stones or interlock stones, we're also seeing an awful lot of design work coming out where maybe it's some patio stones that have some really big chunky joints, like 4 or 6 inches in between the patio stones, and strips of gravel in between, right? So it makes it permeable, also gives it a really different look. And when we set it up that way, if we've got those items going on, so again, the patio stones or interlock stones or even concrete squares, with a big chunky gravel joint, it's really easy to do that around the corner without necessarily having to do a lot of cutting. So it reduces the amount of manual labor that you're putting in too. When we think about what choices of stone we're making, whether that's in a flat spot, so like a driveway or a pathway, or even we're starting to think more vertical, so in a retaining wall. We're seeing a lot of choices from something that's a little bit more modern. We're seeing the faces or the surface a little bit smoother as opposed to a lot of pebbly surfaces. Means it's easier to clean, right? So again, less maintenance. That's the other big trend. We want sustainable, we want local, we want things that are going to make our life easier. And when we organize our hardscapes, so again, our patios, our driveways, our pathways, our retaining walls, even our structures, our gazebos, our arbors, into things that are squares and rectangles, it makes it really easy to add on to in the future without having to do a whole lot of recutting or redigging, right? So you don't, if you've got a beautiful curved piece, sometimes it's really hard to take that into something other than a curve. Not to say curves aren't beautiful, but don't get me wrong, I love, love, love organic designs. When we're looking at organic design, it should be something where the curves are really simple and flowing. Good organic design is actually rooted in geometry. So when we think about those sweeping corners, those are all made from an arc or a tangent of a circle. So we're actually starting with the center point and making a very, very easy radius. When you build a curve like that, whether it's in a garden or whether it's in a pathway or driveway or anything else, it's really easy to install because it's very easy to lay out. So it makes the landscape install so much easier, and that's one of the things our landscape team loves. Now don't get me wrong, they're all for doing something that's totally 100% customized to you, but some days they do kind of look at the plan and go, you know what, Jess and Kate, this was awesome. It's a little bit simpler on the eyes, a little bit easier to install, and it's a lot easier to maintain. So again, we've talked 3 trends at this point. Local, sustainable, which means more permeable and using local products. Also, we've talked about lower maintenance, and that's something that's consistent across the board for the last 10 years. We want less work. Totally makes sense.
So Tanya, when people are looking at balconies, a lot of people are downsizing now and they're doing a variety of different things. What would you recommend? What are the trends that you're hearing about, seeing, anything like that?
So the easiest way to do less work is to downsize, and that's something we're seeing from our clients as well. So when you're leaving your home with those really, really big yards and maybe moving into a condo or a townhouse, if you've got a small yard space, that's fantastic. You've got a small space you can manage, or maybe you've got a balcony where your garden all of a sudden is in pots. So now you can think something a little bit more tropical, which is what I've got behind me here. So again, in terms of our hardscapes for a balcony, we're looking at things like outdoor carpets, we're thinking about our furniture, and we're also thinking about our planters. So our planters give us an opportunity to have personality. Neutral colors are still the single biggest seller. So neutral colors are grays, blacks, browns, and whites. And again, those 4 colors outsell everything else. Want to add a little bit of personality? Then let's do some whites and some blacks, and we'll add a little bit of blue just for the right touch. When you're looking at your pots, you also want to think about just how thick are the walls. Why is this important? Well, this is going to be a sustainability for your back kind of thing, right? So if we've got a really thin wall pot, this pot needs to come inside every winter. The thicker the wall, the more likely it can stay outside. We're also looking at something that a lot of times is done in ceramic. So it's done with clay and then glazed on the outside, or there's a whole bunch of different options as well. What you put in those planters, the bigger the planter, so if you're looking at something that's say 2 or 3 feet across, you can now get shrubs and trees in there, so you've got something year round. The little planters, those 8 to 10 to 12 inch, we look at changing those out every season, and you can do a drop in. No different than you would have done on your front porch in your home. And again, it's a really, really good way to add some personality to your stuff.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for 2025. These are some great trends. It's interesting how, different things sort of morph year over year, and, the sustainability piece, and then, typically Canadian pieces as well, I think are very, very important.
Super important. Again, we want to support local.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.